3 legendary hunters are dead, and the whole world just watched a magic beast murder President Go on camera. So I called the first press conference of my life, not to calm anyone down, but to turn every hunter the monsters are hunting into my trap, with me as the bait. What I don't know is that in a cave of ice, the monarchs have already answered. 3 of them just agreed to kill the Shadow Monarch while he's still human. AI Anime and Manga presents Solo Leveling. If the Shadow Monarch's rise has you hooked, a like really helps. And tell me in the comments, why do you think the system went silent? Subscribe so you don't miss the Monarchs making their move, and channel members get every episode early. Christopher Reed, Jonas, Gun-Hee Go. The world was plunged into chaos as the media announced the deaths of these legendary hunters one after another. Who would be able to defeat whoever had taken down these apex hunters? The mainstream media across the planet reported on the legends' deaths. The Hunter Command Center of the US released an official statement on the situation, indicating that they were working in cooperation with guilds internationally to try and apprehend those responsible. Understandably, this did little to settle people's nerves. The defensive walls that had protected everyone from the threat of magic beasts had been torn down. Amid the chatter of the media and the hunter community, the Hunters Association of Korea released some video footage from the security camera in President Go's office. People cried out, "Oh my God." Another voice exclaimed, "Oh." People couldn't contain their horror. The footage showed 2 men, President Go and another man who stabbed the president in the chest with something sharp. It was easy to tell that the second man wasn't human, an ice elf. A magic beast that belonged in a dungeon killing a top hunter had been clearly captured on video. A close-up of the monster's face spread throughout the internet. The impact of the footage was staggering. Not only could hunters hunt magic beasts, but they could also be hunted. A wave of terror hit the general population. Hunters had protected them, but who could protect the hunters? To complicate matters, people started arguing that hunters should not be permitted to leave their own country since President Go had been murdered while I was away from Korea. That shifted the focus back onto me during this chaotic time. It was public knowledge that President Go and I got along, so people were curious about my reaction. But I said nothing. A few days passed, and the investigation into the cause of President Go's death was completed. A day before his funeral, I quietly visited the Hunters Association. Director Jinwoo looked exhausted as he entered the waiting room.
Sorry, Hunter Sung. I've been all over the place these past few days.
He fidgeted with his messy stubble as he apologized to me. The day we returned from the US, the shocking news had sent Director Woo rushing straight to the Hunters Association as soon as we landed at Incheon Airport. That had been 3 days ago. Before he got to the reason he was there, I had a question for Jinchul. Why did you withhold some of the footage from the security camera? The Hunters Association had shared only up to the close-up of the Frost Monarch's face. They didn't release the part showing me or Baru entering the president's office. Scratching his head as he responded, Jinchul sounded despondent.
The safety of hunters is the association's #1 priority. We decided that it is not our place to reveal the skills you chose to keep hidden.
Skills were like cards that hunters held close to their chests. Showing off one's skills would be like revealing one's whole hand. Naturally, the higher the hunter's rank, the greater the effort to keep one's skills secret, as it could prove advantageous during unexpected encounters. I possessed a teleportation skill that allowed me to travel from the US to the Hunters Association building instantly. The Hunters Association had decided they couldn't put this skill on display to the world without my consent.
If President Go were alive, he would have made the same decision.
No one respected or patterned themselves after President Go more than Jinchul Woo. His eyes turned red as he spoke about his late mentor. No wonder you looked so grave when we boarded the plane that day. I confirmed Jinchul's suspicion. Jinchul had wondered about the cause of my strange mood, but it had been easy to surmise once he watched the video footage.
Was the magic beast too powerful for even you to stop?
I shook my head. When I arrived, President Go was already seeing the somber look on my face. Jinchul lowered his head.
I'm sorry. I'm sure you're mourning him too, but in my frustration...
Jinchul knew better than anyone that I was not responsible for President Go's death, and my attempts to reassure him that I didn't take it personally made the director feel even guiltier.
I still can't believe it.
Jinchul fixed his eyes on the floor.
President Go told me to hurry back because he wanted to hear everything that happened in the US, so why did he have to?
Jinchul couldn't finish his sentence. I patiently waited for him to continue.
What did President Go say before he passed?
He said he was relieved.
What?
Jinchul looked up in surprise. He said he was relieved that there were young people like me to take care of the future. Oh. The thought of President Go worrying about everyone else's future during his final moments brought tears to Jinchul's eyes again. He wiped his eyes and nodded.
Thank you for being with President Go at the end.
The peaceful look on his face showed that the old man had to have been sincere about being relieved. Jinchul was genuinely thankful. I quietly listened to Jinchul. My thoughts had been a jumbled mess over the past few days, so it felt like my head was clearing thanks to him. I'm going to kill him with my own hands.
Huh?
I coldly declared, I'm going to kill the magic beast who took President Go's life, whatever it takes. This wasn't just for President Go, but also a warning to the creatures threatening me. Jinchul swallowed hard. Although the murderous aura coming from me wasn't directed toward him, he found it hard to breathe. My murderous rage pressed down on Jinchul's shoulders like a cold, hard weight. I dialed it down after seeing Jinchul's face grow pale. So please save your thanks for later.
Oh.
Jinchul nodded and tried to calm his racing heart.
Understood.
He then realized he didn't know why I was here in the first place. A hunter like me likely wasn't here simply to find out why the rest of the video footage hadn't been revealed to the public.
Oh dear. Now that I think about it, I haven't asked why you've come.
I made a request for something I decided on after a few days of agonizing debate. Do you think you can arrange a press conference for me? The venue for the press conference was mobbed by reporters. I had been a newsworthy hunter for some time now. This was my first press conference, so no reporter wanted to miss the event. The loud chatter died down as I appeared. All eyes were focused on me as I began to speak. A group of highly intelligent magic beasts is targeting the top hunters. These magic beasts are stronger than any hunter and will use any means necessary to get to their targets. A group of magic beasts? Was more than one magic beast responsible for killing President Go? The reporters were stunned by the revelation. But my information regarding the 9 monarchs and the coming war between them and the rulers had come from the King of Giants, the monarch of the beginning. The monarch's first targets had been the hunters borrowing the ruler's powers. 3 of them were already dead, and no one knew how many more they were after. I had placed shadows with the hunters on the Hunter Command Center's radar, but there was no way I could keep an eye on every single hunter out there. Victims could turn up in unexpected places, just like President Go. This impromptu press conference was meant to send a warning across the globe to possible targets of the magic beasts. Before attacking, these beasts used magic to trap their intended target between dimensions. This revelation was huge, and it was something I could share only because I had met a monarch in person. If you think you might be one of these targets, please stick close to colleagues who can help protect you. But, I revealed the ultimate reason for the press conference. But if you don't have anyone who can help you, I can be reached through the Hunters Association of Korea. Oh, the reporters let out sounds of admiration. I was the man who had defeated Thomas Andre, one of the best hunters in the world. My display of confidence made it seem as if the magic beasts were not a threat to me and relieved some of their worries. I was also looking to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I need to set traps using the hunters who are potential targets. That way I could track the monarch's movements in case they targeted other retired hunters like President Go. At least one magic beast was sure to fall into my trap. As I wrapped up the press conference, I was inundated with questions. A daily news reporter called out, "Where did you get the information about the group of magic beasts Hunter Sung?" I've encountered them in the past. Twice, in fact, the first time being the King of Giants in Japan and the second being the Frost Monarch in Korea. Shocked, the reporter scribbled down what I had said. Another reporter asked, "So you came away from these encounters unscathed?" My eyes gleamed. Yes, I had survived encounters with those magic beasts. This was a huge scoop, so the reporters rushed to take pictures. Kashak, 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 kashak. A reporter sitting farther back from the front of the press pool raised his hand. It was Mr. Kim, the reporter who had followed Jinchul to the double dungeon and wrote about the sacrifice of the hunters there. I shifted my gaze to him. Mr. Kim calmly lowered his hand and posed his question with a clear voice.
What will you do if you encounter the magic beast who killed President Go?
I searched Mr. Kim's furious and devastated expression before turning off the mic. That's all for now. With that, I stepped off the stage. As he watched me walk away, Mr. Kim felt as if he'd heard my answer even without me verbalizing it. One guard exclaimed, "Sir." The other echoed, "Sir." The two security guards were surprised to see Thomas. He gestured for them to stay seated. Beep. Thomas placed his thumb on the fingerprint scanner and the automated door quietly opened for him. Thomas and Laura entered the storage room located in the basement of the Scavenger Guild headquarters. The two A-rank security guards were among the few people who had access to the storage room. If anything happened, there was a direct line to the penthouse where Thomas worked. Thomas strode to the innermost part of the chamber. Laura asked,
"Are you really going to give those to him?"
Beep. Another fingerprint scanner gave them access to where the items were stored. Thomas asked,
"Why? Do you think they're worth too much for the lives of my guild members and me?"
Laura answered.
"No, I don't, but..."
Thomas asked.
"Then do you think he isn't good enough to use them?"
Laura had no answer. It would be a waste of time to answer that. Laura's mouth snapped shut as she realized there was no point arguing with Thomas. The guildmaster stood in front of the items he had come to retrieve. Although they weren't his choice of weaponry, his heart stuttered whenever he saw them. Thomas murmured.
"They amaze me every time."
Thomas admired them. Laura was still reluctant to give them up. Laura said,
"There are only 2 of these in the whole world."
Thomas answered.
"That's right."
Laura continued.
"Which won't change in the future, either."
Thomas replied.
"You're probably right."
Laura asked.
"But you're still giving them away?"
Thomas said.
"That's exactly why I'm giving them to him."
Thomas grinned. 8 years had passed since the weapons were forged, yet the incredible energy they emitted hadn't diminished at all. Thomas said.
"The best weapons for the best hunter. You wouldn't want them to just rot in here, would you?"
As if in response to Thomas, the 2 daggers in the case gleamed, reflecting the light above. A certain gloom permeated the streets. The first president of the Hunters Association. Someone had to do it, but no one had stepped forward. No one except Gunny Go. When the country needed someone to rally its powerful hunters, President Go had closed his own successful business without hesitation and rolled up his sleeves to build the association. The Hunters Association of Korea had accomplished many things under his leadership. It both regulated and protected hunters and was also proactive in rewarding hunters who sacrificed their lives by discreetly compensating the families they left behind. Many of the people who had received help from President Go over the years had gathered at the memorial service to publicly mourn him. Citizens descended on the area until it could no longer hold any more people. They held a candlelit vigil and shared their sorrow. Networks interrupted their regular programming to highlight President Go and his life's work. Footage of President Go calling out Congressman Jinwoo Nam played on a huge digital billboard in the middle of the city.
I hope you all think carefully about who exactly will keep you safe when another S-rank gate appears on this land. You may be able to buy an expensive condo worth $1 million or tens of millions, but you cannot buy a life.
Walk signals changed, but not one pedestrian moved. They couldn't look away from the billboard or their cell phones. Next came a clip of President Go's longtime doctor being interviewed. The doctor said,
"I was beside President Go as he watched the broadcast of Hunter Jinwoo Sung fighting the ants on Jeju Island. He told me he wouldn't regret dying as his greatest wish had come true. Little did I know we would lose him this way."
The doctor, whose eyes had been red since before the interview, eventually broke down in tears. It reminded viewers of the time President Go had silently cried with the families of the hunters who had lost their lives during the failed mission to stop the ants on Jeju Island. President Go had as many critics as he did admirers. However, on this day, everyone paid their respects to him. Later that night, I stood at the top of Daesung Tower, a 100-story skyscraper, unbothered by the wind. The bright lights of downtown Seoul caught my eye. A documentary about President Go played on a huge outdoor monitor. For a moment, I said nothing. I scanned the entire city like a hawk searching for prey. Having done this before, my shadows efficiently combed the downtown area. The information they gathered bombarded my mind, but none of it was relevant. There was no trace of the ancient Ice Slayer anywhere. This isn't going to work. I knew very well that it would be difficult to capture a magic beast able to use gates to move in between dimensions. So I tried to put a shadow on the magic beast right before it escaped. I had failed, though, because the creature didn't have the one thing possessed by everything in existence: a shadow. Maybe it's because of that astral body thing. The King of Giants had told me that monarchs and rulers were unable to become shadow soldiers because they had astral bodies. If that was why monarchs didn't have shadows, I had lost my best method to track them, but that doesn't matter. The King of Giants had warned me that once the other monarchs learned of me, they would mobilize. They would return sooner or later, and this time they would be after me. Of course, when that time came, I growled. Ever since I survived the double dungeon and acquired the abilities of the system, I had never let an enemy escape. This ice elf had been the first to get away. Regardless of whether they were human or magic beasts, I had an excellent track record with taking down my enemies, so I wasn't going to let this creature be the exception. Wait, I paused as I realized something odd about the enemies I had faced recently. When I thought about it, did I receive any notifications from the system when I fought Dongsu Huang or Thomas Andre? In the past, the system had warned me through messages or urgent quests whenever there was a threat to my life. Dongsu Huang, Taisi Kang, Chul Kim, there had been no exception. Not only that, but the system had sent me a warning when Ryuji Goto had gone all out during a sparring match. But the system never warned me about Dongsu when he came after me to avenge his brother's death, or when Thomas threatened to kill me. That was strange. Anyway I sliced it, I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I took out my cell phone to confirm something. Luckily, I had gotten the contact number I needed from the manager. It was 1 o'clock in the morning in Korea, but it should still have been daytime on the east coast of the US. Reeing, as I expected, the man answered after a few rings. Thomas sounded surprised.
I didn't think you would contact me first, Mr. Sung.
There's something I want to ask you, Thomas replied.
Me? Sure. Ask away. I'll answer you as honestly as I can.
That day we fought, Thomas asked.
What about it?
Were you really aiming to kill me? Thomas said.
I thought that was water under the bridge.
Thomas seemed reluctant to relive that day, so I assured him I was asking out of curiosity. Thomas had no reason to hide anything. The American hesitated a little, but answered truthfully. Thomas answered,
I can't think straight when I'm mad, so I really did want to kill you back then.
As I had suspected, I really had sensed murderous intent from Thomas during our encounter. However, the system had kept silent. There was no question about it. Something's changed, Thomas asked.
Mr. Sung?
Thomas broke the awkward silence that followed his answer by changing the subject. Thomas said,
Let's get off this gloomy topic. Why don't we talk about something awesome I've prepared?
Click. I wasn't in the mood to joke around with Thomas, so I cut him off with a quick farewell and hung up. Thomas's response had clarified things. The system no longer reacted to a hostile enemy. This was a huge departure from the beginning, when the system had forced him to confront his attackers. I can't take this lightly. Initially, when I had received a notification that the system would stop my heart if I didn't kill my enemies, I'd had a vague idea as to its purpose. The system was trying to make me act according to its wishes, or so I'd surmised. But the fact that I no longer received urgent quests signaled that there might have been a change in the system's intent. With that came more choice for me, and I was able to show Thomas some mercy and spare his life. I couldn't have done that if there had been an urgent quest. I was pleased to have more free will, but at the same time I didn't know why. Did it have anything to do with how the original wielder of my power had betrayed the other monarchs somehow? Or had their plans been uprooted after the architect of the system was killed? I shook my head to stave off all the speculation and theories popping up in my mind. I need to organize my thoughts. I needed to set some clear goals now. One would be to kill the ancient Ice Slayer. Another would be to dig up some information about the other monarchs. It would be great if it targeted me first. But even if the Ice Slayer went after the other hunters, I had set traps. Once the Ice Slayer was caught in my net, I could accomplish both goals at once. The problem was time. Since I didn't know when the monarchs would appear, I had to prepare myself for battle against formidable enemies. Luckily, I had arranged for somewhere I could steadily gain experience points: Japan. Unable to restore all the damage done by the giants, Japan had been forced to abandon a lot of land. While I was in the US, many dungeon breaks had occurred, and magic beasts had established their own territories. These creatures were the stuff of nightmares to the Japanese people, but to me they were nutritious food. I couldn't help feeling excited at the prospect. My phone vibrated with an incoming message from Thomas.
Mr. Sung, could you call me again? We still have a lot to discuss, Ru.
Just as the ground solidified after rain, it looked as though Thomas wanted a good relationship with me now that we'd fought. Of course, I welcomed it. I wasn't so socially awkward that I'd reject a hand extended to me. But this conversation could wait, couldn't it? I liked that Thomas didn't hold any grudges, but it was too late at night for this kind of talk. I quickly texted back, "Sure, but later. I have some urgent business to take care of." A smile appeared on my face after I sent my reply. This doesn't change anything. I would steadily increase my level in preparation for the future. It was the same as it ever was. Good. I felt better than when I'd first set foot at the top of Daesung Tower. Now, as I descended the tower, there was a spring in my step. Jinwoo wasn't the only one who was preparing for a fight. The Frost Monarch had escaped to its hideout and summoned all the monarchs currently inhabiting this world. 3 men and 1 woman appeared in its ice cave. The Frost Monarch spoke before the 4 royals.
The Shadow Monarch is here.
It explained to them what had transpired. For a moment, none of the gathered monarchs answered. It was cold enough in the cave to freeze a human's blood, but it didn't bother the monarchs. The real chill in the air came from their mood upon hearing this unwelcome news. One monarch asked,
"Didn't you tell us there were no vessels strong enough to contain his power?"
"The King of Wild Dragons was unable to find purchase in this world for the same reason." But the Frost Monarch shook its head.
I saw him with my own eyes. It was him.
2 of the monarchs who had already experienced the Shadow Monarch's power on Jeju Island agreed. The Frost Monarch proposed something to the somber group.
He represents a bigger threat than the fragments of luminosity. I shall eliminate him. Will you help me?
But the other monarchs were unmoved. This opponent was the most powerful king among the 9 who ruled the world of chaos. Fighting him would be suicide, so the other monarchs erred on the side of caution. One of them spoke up.
Wouldn't it be better to wait for the King of Wild Dragons?
The King of Wild Dragons was the monarch of destruction and more than capable of punishing the traitor. The Frost Monarch bared its fangs.
Despite being outcasts, we each rule an army. How long will we drag our feet waiting for the King of Wild Dragons?
The dagger that had pierced the Frost Monarch hadn't just injured its shoulder. It had dealt a blow to its ego. The Frost Monarch had to repay the Shadow Monarch in kind. The Frost Monarch said,
If we want to eliminate the Shadow Monarch, the best time to strike is while he's still human. Help me send him back to the void.
Despite this display of determination, one of the monarchs withdrew.
I will not participate in this.
Remembering the fate of Balan, the king of demons, who had fought the Shadow Monarch, another monarch vanished. Another monarch said. Another monarch said.
I do not want to end up like the Monarch of Lightning.
The Frost Monarch clicked its tongue.
Cowards.
Only 3 monarchs remained. A hulking figure turned to the Frost Monarch.
Where is the evidence that he's still human?
As if awaiting this moment, the Frost Monarch showed off the dagger Jinwoo had thrown. A green substance clung to its surface. The Frost Monarch said,
He applied poison to the dagger.
It was manticore poison. Although ineffective against monarchs, it would rot the skin of an ordinary denizen of chaos with a single touch. Jinwoo had applied the poison in advance as a secret weapon. It was a detail-oriented and clever move, but wasn't the Shadow Monarch's style. It was clear evidence that a human currently controlled the Shadow Monarch. The Frost Monarch politely asked its 2 lingering brethren,
Are you with me on this matter?
The Frost Monarch had power comparable to the still human Shadow Monarch. But with the combined might of the others, it was sure that it could overpower their enemy. The 2 monarchs exchanged glances and considered. Eventually, they agreed. One of them said,
I will help you.
The other agreed.
Let us kill the Shadow Monarch.
The Frost Monarch resolved to instill true fear in the human who had wounded its shoulder and sneered.